Okay, today I'm going to show you how to use the Vertex Paint modifier within 3D Studio Max to alter and deform geometry in case you were needing to create something like a terrain to meet your specific application and or to deform geometry in general. In this case, I'm going to create a simple terrain to demonstrate the functionality of the Vertex Paint modifier and its ability to deform geometry. Let's start by creating a plane, and we'll give this plane a dimension of 5,000 units by 5,000 units, which in real space would be about a square mile. Let's give it 50 segments by 50 segments to allow for enough detail that you can see the deformations. Let's go full screen and zoom out to see the full model. First thing we need to do is apply a material to the geometry. A simple material of any type will do for this demonstration. I'll change the color just to demonstrate that the Vertex Paint modifier will not affect the diffuse of the model. So whatever your textures need to be, they will not be affected by this technique of the Vertex Paint modifier to deform geometry. First, let's add a map to the displacement slot of the material, and we'll add a Vertex Paint map. They call it Vertex Color. And we'll go back to the slot and disable the displacement map within the material. It has already been applied. Then we need to, let's close the material window for now, material editor window for now. Then let's add a Vertex Paint modifier to the geometry. Scroll down below where my recording is visible. There is a Vertex Paint modifier at the bottom of the list. We'll apply the Vertex Paint modifier. As you can see, its rollout appears on the left there. Additionally, we'll add a displace modifier on top of that, and with that we need to make a couple of adjustments to the displace modifier in order to allow for the application that I'm demonstrating. First, let's turn on use existing mapping function in the map portion of the rollout, and we'll also select Vertex Color Channel in the channel function of the rollout. Let's also change the displacement level, or the strength of the displacement, to something around 200 in order that we can see with enough detail what changes the Vertex Paint modifier will do to the geometry. Let's change the strength to about 200 there. And I think that's all we need to do to the displace modifier. One more thing we need to do to it, though, I'll mention. Let's open the material editor again, and we need to pull the Vertex Color map over to the displace map rollout button and make it an instance, and that will allow for the changes that we make to the Vertex Paint map with the Vertex Paint modifier to be reflected in the displace modifier. And now we're ready to deform the geometry with the Vertex Paint modifier. Let's close the material editor and select the Vertex Paint modifier. First thing we need to do here is change the display to Vertex Color Display Shaded. That will allow for a black and white display of the geometry. Even though the diffuse has not been affected, it will display black and white so that we can see what the vertex painting is, where we're painting on the geometry and what vertexes are being affected. Let's first fill all the vertexes with a black vertex color, and that will deform the geometry, all the vertexes of the geometry, down to level Z0, which would be where you'd want to start, and anything we do from there will be above the Z elevation. And you can see that we're at 0 on the user coordinate system. You can tell that by the heavy black line. That's usually at the Z0. Let's go back to full screen here and begin painting on the geometry. As we paint, First, let's select it to reveal the modifiers again. Select the Vertex Paint modifier, and I've got a brush size of 400 already changed here. Usually default is 10. If you left it at the default and began painting, the brush, as you see, the little blue mark there, is so small that you really wouldn't be able to see the effect. So let's change the brush size to around 400, and that way we'll get enough of an effect that we can see it deform the geometry on the fly. And the other thing we want to do here is change the color of on the color swatch to something lighter than black, because black will create 0 Z elevations. Anything above or lighter than black will deform in the positive Z direction. And we've changed the swatch to white, and I'm ready to begin painting, and simply start painting on the geometry. And as you see, it changes the geometry, deforms the geometry on the fly as you paint, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve if we were trying to create a mountain range of our own desire or specific in specific places. Let's change the size of the brush. You can see if you change the size of the brush, you'll change the size of the paint effect. Let's go back to 400. The other thing I want to show you here is that you can change the brush options, which will change the way that the geometry is deformed with the paintbrush. So, for example, if we changed this point on the painter option curve, that's going to create just a flat top hill. If we let's pull this one down to see the effect. This one here, moving it in that way, will just change the way that it's deformed, that your geometry is deformed. You can do some neat things with the painter options by adding points along the curve and adjusting those points, and that will create different types of mountain tops. Let's change it to something like just getting an idea of some of the different things you can do with the geometry deformation here, and toying around with this curve. With a little practice, you can make peaks and valleys in accordance with your project. If we wanted to zero them out and start all over, let's change the color swatch to black and paint everything black, and everything will zero back out, and you can start with a fresh model. Let's go back to something more of a default mountain top. And as I say, you can create a mountain range to your specifications depending on what you're trying to create, with roads and valleys and rivers and etc., etc., etc. And that was the extent of what I really wanted to show you with this modifier. It's pretty neat. I saw another tutorial on how to deform geometry with the Vertex Paint modifier, but it used the world space displace modifier rather than the object space displace modifier, and in that case the difference is that the world space displace modifier will not allow you to collapse the modifiers and then change everything to an editable poly for exporting into your game environments and so forth. And so that's pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to show you, though, is additionally you can once you've created the geometry to the extent that you want to, or deform the geometry to the extent that you desire, you can add various modifiers on top of that, like a smoothing modifier, just to do some different things, like if it was a snow covered area. Just pretty neat stuff. And let's see, is there anything else I wanted to show you with this modifier? No, I think that's except that you can at this point collapse everything down to the one level modified mesh. You can change it to a poly or whatever you might need to do with it. And I thought that was pretty cool, rather than what I saw with the other tutorial, which also was not in English, even though my English is local indeed. But thank you for watching, and have a good afternoon.